I think the one advice I'd like to give is stick to your domain. People who have domain who understood issues are in a position to solve for very specific problems that the market's ready to pay for. You can't have an idea or a solution that's seeking to find a problem. You must know the problem you're solving for.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Startup Story Spotlight. This is your host, Abdul Wahid. Uh, on this platform, we invite startup founders, innovators, and entrepreneurs to share their journeys and how they have accomplished their successful startups in the ecosystem. Today, we have with us Muzammil Patel, who is from Acies, who's the founder of Acies. Today, he's going to share his journey with us, and we are delighted to have him with us on our platform. Thank you for joining in, sir, and sharing your journey with us. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Sir, my first question would be for you would be what was the idea or inspiration to start this wonderful startup, sir?
Well, I think, for us, what sort of drove our decision to set up or start up Acies was the desire to sort of move from being largely in an advisory field to sort of moving into a field where we would actually participate in the outcome. I think that's kind of what sort of drove us. I think the other thing that sort of drove us also is the fact that a lot of the expertise that you accumulate over the years, if you're not able to translate that into technology or codify it into technology, it becomes harder to scale, and it becomes harder to sort of allow for that expertise or that knowledge to be used more broadly. So I think those were largely the two sort of driving forces for us while we set up Acies, and that's the ethos by which we've kind of tried to propel the firm as well. A large part of sort of what we've done or tried to do is stay true to that part of our goal, which is essentially to democratize technology, and a large part of that essentially came from being able to translate a lot of that knowledge into technology, and then making the technology more available to a broader spectrum of users.
That's nice. So that's a very great initiative that you have thought behind starting the startup. So can you please tell the audience what is the background on the founders who started this wonderful startup in this space?
So the background of almost all of my partners, or all of the co-founders, is that they spent a significant amount of time in the consulting industry. Most of them spent about 15 years in sort of the larger consulting firms. Some of them did spend some time with banks and financial institutions, and some with a couple of fintechs. But a large part of it had been on the consulting side, right? And that's kind of where we sort of got a lot of our thought process together, and kind of that's what drove us to say that we got to take this thought process and build something tangible out of it.
That's a diverse team of founders that you have vast experience in building the startup. So, what were the early challenges that you had faced while starting this? The challenges that you had in while starting the startup, sir?
I think the single most important challenge when you start and when you want to start something that's tech driven or tech oriented is sort of building that skill. We originally sort of thought we would sort of go to market in a way, and we would acquire some of that skill. We learned very earlier on that the core of your business should not be outsourced, cannot be outsourced, and that learning curve of the first, I'd say, 6 to 9 months of saying that we need to reskill ourselves. We're not going to be able to rely on outsourcing it or any third party or anybody we induct into the founder group. I think that was the first sort of challenge to overcome. Right. I think the second challenge is sort of more internal to us as opposed to a market challenge. Is It's about mindset, right? Because in many ways, when you've spent a significant amount of time in a certain industry, you're known in that industry and your brand sort of gets associated with that, it's obviously a lot harder to sort of refocus your brand on something that goes far beyond that. I think that's a challenge that to a certain extent we still have, and it is still something that we are sort of working with, right? But I'd say I think these would be sort of the two biggest challenges when we kind of set up and even today to a certain extent.
Sir, can you tell the audience what is the target market of Acies, sir?
So I'd break up, ACS into its different parts, and different parts in a sense have different target markets. We break ourselves into four verticals. So we have TechWorks, which is where a large part of our technology IP sits. Consulting, which is sort of a more traditional consulting business. Lighthouse, which is our learning and development platform, and Ventures is through where we partner with other entrepreneurs in the ecosystem, largely to help them use our technology to well build enterprises the way we have, right? For us, TechWorks itself has largely been a financial services focused business, as has consulting. About I'd say 70 to 75% of our revenues still today come from financial services, largely between banks, insurance companies, and NBFCs. Right, so that's largely sort of our market and our focus area. Still very B2B enterprise. A large part of our goal in TechWorks, and also the reason we have the Ventures program, is to be in a position to allow people to use our tech to go beyond that B2B enterprise space, right?
Yes.
And that's kind of where the whole democratizing technology comes in, for us to be able to, be a part of ecosystems where we are not strong in domain, but our tech can sort of help translate that domain into viable business models. So as of today, a lot of what we're doing in the ventures program is reasonably adjacent to the financial services industry, but we do hope that as we open up the platform more and more to a larger set of entrepreneurs, and essentially reach a point where people can, basically just log into a portal and start using our technology. I think that's the point where we'll have a larger industry footprint.
That's really nice to how we have broken down the whole target market of yours. Sir, my next question to you would be, what are the emerging trends in the market and in the industry as of now, sir?
Well, I think I think fundamentally, the biggest challenge with tech had come to a point, and it sort of tapered off a little, but we reached a point where people started treating coding as a life skill, right? It shouldn't really be that way, right? Coding, essentially, is something that you choose to do. We had reached a point where people said if you can't code, or you can't get, basically a 6-year-old kid to build that into their curriculum or learning, there is no future, right? I think we reached that point where essentially we said business is not relevant, technology is, right? I think that has come to head in a way. We saw that heavily spike during the pandemic, but I think post the pandemic, we've kind of reached a point where that sort of trend and behavior has changed, and now business has become sort of more front and center, right? What has started happening is that obviously no code platforms like the one we have, other technology pieces essentially are empowering people a lot more now with a business focus, or a business sort of drive to ignore the problems of technology, right? And to a large extent, that's what the trend that is taking over, which is you focus on the commerce, you focus on the business model. Earlier, a lot of capital, a lot of interest, a lot of effort went in the tech, and we almost had a situation where you had technology that was trying to solve problems that didn't exist, right? Now that trend's reversed. We have real business problems, real, sort of real life issues that now you're able to apply technology to solve. So I think that's sort of one of the trends, and I think it's a positive change. I think we kind of almost turned that on its head in the last, year and a half. It had kind of gone the other way during the pandemic phase, right? I think the other piece that we are also seeing a lot in terms of trend is speed. Tech projects that lasted 6 months, 12 months, 2 years. There's no patience for that anymore, right? If you can't sort of give a digital outcome in less than 6 weeks, it's a non-starter, right? I think for the longest time, technology investments got prioritized based on what can be done over a longer period of time. I think what people have come to realize is that if there is a technology need, if you want to build an app and that app's going to become redundant in a year, you still need to build it, because during that 1 year you still need to be able to monetize, and build a business model around it. And I think that speed of tech, enablement, deployment, has sort of dramatically improved. The other thing that we're sort of seeing quite a bit on now, uh, is that a lot of the initial investments that went into the tech side went into either a very fintechish behavior, or it went down into what were traditional businesses and had a mobile app, right? I mean, that's the two sort of places where a lot of the money, or capital went into. What we are now starting to see is that a lot of capital is going into sort of truly front to back digital businesses. It's not just that you have an app, but everything behind's happening, manually, or it's not just fintechs where a large part of the focus is payment and transaction driven. A lot of it's now happening on the B2B SaaS model, or the B2C or B2SMB SaaS model. I think that's where a lot of the focus is going. And again, it's a positive, because essentially what you're saying is that, that's the way we can proliferate tech into everything that we are doing. It's not just very specific segments.
Yes, sir. Sir, according to you, what are the key driving factors for the industry in India in the coming years?
I think talent's going to be a big sort of driver, right? We do, and in India we've kind of prided ourselves to have a large sort of both capacity and expertise of IT or IT enabled services talent. A lot of that talent is going to need reskilling in a big way. It's still tech, it's still IT, it's still IT services, but it's not the same technology. It's not the same outcomes that you're playing for. It's not the same bar that is being set. It no longer is going to be an industry that works on, so many hours into this rate is going to give you this outcome. It's going to have to be a purely outcome focused sort of business. So I think a large amount of reskilling and business model change over there is almost inevitable. I think what's the other driver apart from talent is that, a large sort of business analyst or business enablement layer also got created over the years with the coding layer. What you may call as a sort of a large group of business analysts slash project managers, right? That's another skill that's going to need a lot more reskilling. It's going to have to be a lot more functionally oriented. It's going to a large extent, also with no code platforms, become reasonably redundant. So a fair amount of reskilling over there on the talent side is also going to be required. I think the other part that's absolutely essential, really, I think, is the sort of literacy or the tech literacy portion, right? The reality today is that you don't need to be a decorated tech expert to build a tech-enabled, product or business or any of that. But just the knowledge and transmission of that knowledge to people to be able to do that, I think that driver is important. I think that creator economy, right? It's not just about here's an ecosystem, here's a platform, but there's a whole creator economy. Someone who can build an app or template, a piece of something that goes into sort of larger products. I think that creator economy is going to have to become a significant driver in this industry as well.
Sir, I would like to know, or the audience also would like to know, what were the challenges and obstacles you had faced during COVID-19 by your startup, sir? During COVID-19, when all the startups were facing some or the other challenges, what were the challenges that you had faced for your startup?
See, I think the most important challenge, in that period is collaboration, right? You can always work from anywhere with the technology at your disposal. That's not hard. In that sense, technology infrastructure has evolved a lot in the last 20 years, where you can be anywhere and still continue working. But I think the challenge is collaboration. You can't get the best ideas. You can't get people to think together unless they are in the same place or in the same sort of physical space, right? And I don't think sort of digital enablement tools have yet reached a point where that part is possible, right? So I think that's the biggest challenge, because minus the collaboration, the innovation sort of starts taking a backseat. You start going to BAU and operations very quickly. So I think that's one part of it. I think the second part of it also is that there is a way that we've come about to do business, right? Accepting that we can do business any other way. If it's for a couple of months, 2 3 months, that's okay. But when you sort of try to rewrite the rules of how you've been doing business for decades in a very short span, and then try to sort of elongate it for the next couple of years, it becomes harder. It becomes harder in the business development process. It becomes harder in the customer engagement process. It becomes much harder in the employee engagement process, right? So I think that's another sort of big challenge, that comes through with COVID. And I think the third most important thing is uncertainty, right? Where people in general and the business environment in general is uncertain about what's going to happen tomorrow. uh, Spending guidance, budgetary allocations tend to happen towards absolute essentials and not to discretionary spend. So I think a culmination of these two three things is kind of the bigger challenges that at least we faced with COVID, and pretty much everyone else did as well.
So, sir, how has the market evolved over the years, according to you, sir? Like, what have been the changes in the market over the years you have seen for your startup and for the upcoming startups in this space?
Yeah, I think the positive that I've at least seen in the last, I'd say, 5 to 7 years is that there is a lot more acceptability, at least in India, to new ideas. If someone walks through the door and tells you it can be done like this, people will listen, right? You don't discount it to say that it's utopian. So I think that is a and the startup ecosystem that's been created over the last 10 years essentially has led to a lot more believability in the future, a lot more believability in technologies that we don't see today, right? So I think that has changed in a lot of ways. What has also changed is that there's been significant access to capital. Growth capital. I mean, one may always argue that capital has not necessarily been utilized in the most efficient way, but in many cases, that growth capital is essential for people to have ideas, have the runway to fail. Right. I think that's an important sort of development that has happened too. I think, however, what hasn't happened, and what's important to happen is that in many ways the B2B enterprise space still tends to sort of work with aged metrics, aged quadrants, aged assessments of what technologies are and what they need. And I think that is a bit of a bridge that they need to cross over, because many a times age metrics and age quadrants to decide which technology is correct kind of just defeats the purpose of being innovative and being ahead of the curve. But I think broadly, just the sort of spurt in the startup ecosystem and access to capital has been a massive positive.
Sir, can you please tell the audience what are all the services offered by Acies to its customers, and what are the new future plans of Acies in new segments and customers they're planning for?
Sure. So I think at the core of our business is our no-code platform, which we call Revolution, right? And Revolution essentially is the platform on which we've built technology in the risk, regulatory, treasury, and finance space primarily, right? So that's essentially the product suites or product segments that have been built on the no-code platform. A lot of our consulting services then complement these products, with implementation, being able to sort of advise on how the market practices or practices in general need to be implemented, right? Our learning and development business essentially then focuses on the financial and tech literacy part, both allowing people to use our products better, but also allowing people to sort of think beyond what's already there, and sort of go and build things out. right? And a ventures program largely again allows people to use this technology to build on their own, right? With sort of support and enablement from us. I think the core important thing for us is that the no code platform that we've created, we still today are heavily B2B, heavily enterprise market driven, right? Which isn't necessarily enough in terms of our vision or goal. We want to be in a position to make this available to everybody. And when you say that we'll truly democratize it, we need to make it available. We need to make it available on demand. We need to make it available at a price point that enables or allows everybody to participate in that ecosystem, right? I think that's really where our goals are, or they will be for the next couple of years. One of the other pieces also is making it easier to use. Because while it's a no-code platform, it saves tons of time and money. There's still a learning curve. We want to sort of bring that learning curve down to natural language. We want to bring that learning curve down to a point where you can talk to a machine and it will build an app for you, right? So a large part of our focus is on that, is essentially taking the backbone that we've built and making it more and more open and accessible to a much broader or much larger spectrum of audience. One way to obviously do that is through our ventures program, where we allow other entrepreneurs to essentially use the platform. But more fundamentally, in the next 12 months, or at least by March of next year, we'd want to be in a position where people can log into a website and use it just like they'd use any other software.
That's really wonderful the way you have explained all your services to the audience, sir. Sir, how does Acies plan to differentiate itself from the competitors in the market, sir? Like, what are the plans of differentiating yourself from other competitors in the market?
See, I think for us at the core, our business model is a little unique. We have and we will continue to have sort of different pockets of competitors in different spaces, right? So our no-code platform business will have a very different set of competitors. The rest of our TechWorks business will have a very different set of competitors. Consulting will have a different set of competitors, which is sort of normal in the fact that our business model is unique, right? What we do believe is a couple of things. I think we are very strong proponent of the open architecture model, which essentially means that you can compete with somebody in one segment and collaborate in another. It's only natural that that's going to happen, right? So it's very possible that we may compete with someone in the consulting space while they will still continue to use our technology and build on our no-code platform when it comes to the tech side, right? So I think fundamentally one of our principles in competition is the open architecture model, where we don't want to curtail accessibility of any of our services to compete or perceive to compete, because it just allows access, it allows the market to grow, it allows the business model to flourish. In terms of differentiating with compete, see, broadly our sort of vision or mission, and of course we are a for-profit organization, we're not a non-profit, but that being said, our vision or our mission is more aligned to making our technology accessible, right? And for us, that is a sufficient differentiator today in the market. We do believe that people will come to see it exactly the way we are seeing it. They will also sort of look to make their technology more accessible to a broader spectrum. And I think at that point of time, at least where we stand today with no-code technology, there's at least 10 years before there's any degree of saturation in the market. So at this point of time, competition is good, and competition that sort of sees it our way of making technology accessible, I think is even better. So I guess that's kind of where we lie on the tech on the competition spectrum.
That's really nice the way you have explained everything, sir. So, what are the challenges or the obstacles faced by the customers or clients in the market or the industry as of now, according to you, sir?
See, I think the biggest issue is I think the biggest issue is knowledge before taking the decision, right? A lot of decisions today are either taken in two ways. Either it's a legacy that just continues to be a legacy, doesn't matter whether it's cost effective or not. Sometimes, if you can't find the better answer, you stick to the traditional answer. And I think that's a bit of a challenge because in the industry itself, a large part of the decision-making process or enablers, themselves need far more sort of, I'd say, enlightenment about what's going on and what's possible with tech out there. I think the second part also is that there is a sort of tendency to lean on advisors of some form who then go back to the sort of traditional way to decide what works or what doesn't work. So I think just that ability to differentiate what's good tech from what tech doesn't serve the purpose. I think is I'd say the single largest sort of issue in the industry. I think the second issue in the industry is catchwords, right? We've been through these catchwords for many years now. It was data analytics one day, it was ML another day, it's AI one day, it's no code another day. And I think a lot of these terms tend to have greater marketing value than actual sort of utility. And for the industry to distinguish where these words are just marketing value versus real utility, I think that's the second challenge, because even for those who sort of cross that bridge and say, well, I'm not going to do this traditionally, I'm going to be enlightened. You just come across a learning curve where you can't distinguish the marketing from the reality, right? And that's almost like taking a step forward and two steps back. So I guess that's the other issue for the industry. I think the third issue for the industry is that today about 80% of all tech spend still goes in legacy tech, and a lot of it goes into maintenance. Just the cost of maintenance of legacy tech makes it harder to take up projects which have far greater value add. So I think these would be, in my view, the issues for the industry today.
Sir, what advice will you give to your fellow entrepreneurs and a person who is starting this space of fintech? What advice would you like to give to your fellow entrepreneurs, sir?
See, I think the one advice I'd like to give is stick to your domain. People who have domain, who understood issues, are in a position to solve for very specific problems that the market's ready to pay for. You can't have an idea or a solution that's seeking to find a problem. You must know the problem you're solving for, and which is where a lot of sort of people with domain expertise, people who've spent time in the industry or industries understanding exactly what they are solving for, are likely to be more successful, are likely to build more cash flow sustainable models than those who are building products seeking a problem to solve, right? And that's a trend that will definitely change. In the last 10 years, we've had products built first, then they seek a problem to solve, which is why you see the amount of cash burn that happens. But if you start the other way, finding the problem first and then finding a solution, you will have a viable business model presenting yourself on the first day itself.
Sir, I think all the questions are done. It was a pleasure having you and hearing your insights and valuable knowledge about the fintech space. I always want to learn about the fintech space, so it was a pleasure having you. Thank you for joining in on Startup Stories Spotlight with us, and we value your time and thank you for joining. So I'm delighted to have you with us. I
Thank
hope
you. It was great talking to you.